welcome to the DIY in VR channel. This is Mr. S. This video is brought to you by everestmodel.com, the best scale modeling website in the world. Today we're going to build the 1/72nd F-4J Phantom from Academy. The kit is beginner friendly because it only has 5 screws. The parts are designed to clip into each other, so you only need glue to reinforce it. I want to use this model to show you the pre-shading technique. But pre-shading requires that the body of the aircraft be assembled. In this case, we can't airbrush and paintbrush everything in one go. We will have to assemble and paint the sub-assembly first, such as the cockpit, the air intake, and the exhaust. Then I'll do the pre-shading. At the end, I'm gonna paint the body color. So let's get started. First, we're gonna do the cockpit. I use a sharp nipper to cut the parts from the screw. Next, we're gonna prime the parts. Personal protection are very important, so I'm wearing a mask, and here are the gloves. I also have a spray booth to extract the fumes. Don't forget to shake the paint before spraying. Notice that I'm spraying short bursts, because it's always better to have too little paint, because you can give it another layer, than have too much paint. It's gonna be too thick and it's gonna drip everywhere. And I'm using plastic cement to glue the parts together. I'm also using extra thin cement to reinforce the bond. Now I'm going to airbrush the cockpit with X19 Sky Gray. Then the instrument panels are brush painted in black. The cockpit buttons should be in white, so I use my toothpick to add the white color. Finally, I'm using a black wash to raise the little details. I dipped a cotton bud into the enamel thinner and wipe off the excess wash. And let's add the seats that's been mostly painted in olive drab. And here is the end result for the cockpit. For the air intake, we're going to prime it, and we're going to paint the interior with TS27 matte white and AS16 light gray. The center of the fan blade has been painted using XF16 flat aluminum. Now we can also assemble the air intake. The exhaust and the tip of the tail are super interesting. We want to create the bluish heat stain that is on the metal. Here is a picture of the real thing. For that, we have to prime them first. Then I painted them with X11 chrome silver. Don't forget to add the acrylic thinner. Then I have to mask the upper part of the tail. I'm using the 1mm very thin masking tape for first layer of mask. Then I'm using the 1 cm wide mask to do the second layer of mask. We also add the very interesting strip pattern on the tail of the plane. I'm imitating this effect using 1mm masking tape, and it is easier to pick up the masking tape with tweezers. Now I'm going to airbrush everything with XF56 metallic gray. So the strips are going to be between X11 chrome silver and XF56 metallic gray. Now we're going to add some heat effect to the strips. So I'm first going to choose a gold leaf color, and I'm going to add some tint of clear blue and clear red. Again, don't forget the acrylic thinner, and let's airbrush it. We use the exact same effect on the exhaust nozzles and on the tail of the plane. I also added some clear green tint to both the exhaust and the tail. Now it's finally time to remove the masking tapes. To blend the effect together, I added some black wash from Tamiya. As usual, we have to wipe off the excess with some enamel thinner and cotton bud. And I added some brown tint and blue tint with the Tamiya Weathering Master Set D. Next, let's move to the canopy. The canopy has a very minor seam line, so we have to remove it. First, I glued a sanding paper on a wood stick. Then I gently sanded the canopy seam line. The sanded area became a little bit rough, so we're gonna use the polishing compound from Tamiya to fix it. I used a microfiber cloth, dipped into the compound and rubbed it gently. Part of the canopy should be painted in the body color, and the other part should stay clear. The only way to do this is to mask the clear part. First, I used a 1 mm mask to mask off the edge of the parts that should stay clear. Then I cut the 1 cm wide masking tape into shapes to fill the rest of the gaps. Here is the end result for the masking. It is ready to be painted. Now all the parts we need for pre-shading are ready. So we have the tail, we have the exhaust, we have the wings, we have the canopy, and we have the cockpit. We can assemble everything with plastic cement. We finally arrived at the pre-shading step. When we paint the fuselage, we need to have a very good handle of the body. So I put some blue tack on the bottom of the aircraft, and I fixed the blue tack on a random paint bottle so I can handle the aircraft body with the bottle. The last step before pre-shading is priming. Now I can mix the paint for pre-shading. You can use any black color from Tamiya and add some acrylic thinner. I lowered the airbrush pressure from 30-35 to only 20 because I want more precise airbrushing. I basically followed the panel lines with my black paint. And I did the same for the belly of the aircraft. When the pre-shading is finished, I got lazy and just painted the body straight off the can. The upper body color is the AS16 light gray. Now we have to work on the separation line between the upper body color and belly color. I realized that the color separation is not a hard line, but rather a soft line. That's why I used blue tack to mask it instead of masking tape. So I rolled the blue tack on the table and then I pushed it against the body. Now I can paint the belly with XF2 white from Tamiya. We should stop when the pre-shading is barely visible. To protect the main body color, I'm applying a coat of gloss varnish. And we are going to apply decal next, so gloss varnish will also reduce the silvering effect of the decals. As usual, we cut the decals from the decal paper. Then I dipped it into the water and to improve the decal adherence, I added some decal setter and I slided the decal onto the airplane's body. Excess water is removed with a cotton bud. I want the decal to sink into the details that is underneath it, things like panel lines and rivets. That's why I also applied the decal softener with a brush. As usual, I added some Tamiya black panel liner to raise the panel lines and the rivets. I did the same for the belly, and I wipe up the excess with Tamiya enamel thinner. And here is the end result. Now we're gonna do another highlight of this model. It's called salt chipping. The objective of this technique is to create some patterns and variations on a very monotonous surface. So first I rubbed some water on the model with my finger. Then I grinded some coarse salt on the model. And I added the pepper. Now we can deep fry the model. I'm joking, obviously. I'm doing a first layer of brush chipping with very thin down white paint. Now we can remove the salt with a paintbrush. We can see that there are some white random patterns that start to appear on the wing. Now we're going to do another layer of salt chipping, but this time with black paint. So as usual, I rubbed some water with my fingers onto the model. Once again, we add the salt and we airbrush the thin down black paint. We remove the salt. So let's look at the end result. So you can clearly see some darker and lighter patterns. That's making things more interesting. Now let's do one last weathering technique. Streaking. I'm starting with the exhaust area with a orangish color, so I mix that with some red oil paint and yellow oil paint. I dipped my brush into the enamel thinner and brushed using a downward motion. And I removed the excess with a cotton bud dipped into enamel thinner. Now we're going to do the darker streaks. They are a specific streak developed by like mostly Spanish companies like AK or Amomig, but I thought that they were overpriced and that I can achieve the same result with some oil paint and thinner. But I was very wrong. The result I achieved was very bad. The streaks are way out of scale. They didn't look realistic at all. So finally, I used the streaking grime for naval ships from AK, and the streaks are perfect, are in scale, and looks very realistic. And I think that any streaking product would work. I also added some streaks on the wings. The model is almost finished. I still have to paint the external fuel tanks and the missiles and the bombs, and also drill out the bombs. And I passed a fishing line through to create a bombing diorama. I showed this model to my wife and told her that I'm doing a in-flight version of the aircraft. And she asked a very interesting question. Where is the pilot? So the kit doesn't include any pilots. At first, I thought I'm going to 3D print the pilots, but I think that since the model is going to be a closed canopy version, we're not going to see a lot of details inside. That's why I decided to do the pilots with Tamiya epoxy putty. So Tamiya epoxy putty comes with two colors. This one is white and yellow. So I had to roll the white and yellow part on the table, and I'm gonna twist them together, and there's gonna be a chemical reaction between the two parts that is going to make them soft at first, then they're gonna harden. Finally, I'm going to use the paste to form a little pilot. So it's not really realistic, but I think through the canopy, the most of the things you can see is the helmet and the shoulders. So we're good. I also painted the body in khaki, the helmet in white, and the goggles in black. Finally, I have to add a coat of flat clear to the model because only toys are shiny. I think our model is finally finished.